answering questions and kind of walking through any troubleshooting that you might have. So feel free to either type questions into the chat or just unmute yourself and kind of ask as we go along. But I am going to hand things off to John, as he is our in-house Flipgrid expert.
Expert. So Flipgrid, I don't know if anybody happened to get onto any of their PD trainings that they do. If you haven't, I would definitely urge you to do that. They do, I think, really, really good trainings, and they've really focused their PD to have offerings kind of specific to this situation. So I have hopped on a few here and there just to see how they've changed things up. And I thought if you're kind of getting going with things and are looking to connect with experts, if you have very specific challenges, that might be a place to look at. So Flipgrid, I should start with a screen share. So last time I did a kind of demonstration, and I think where Flipgrid's fairly straightforward. I might take a couple minutes just to do that so people can see it if you haven't used Flipgrid before. But basically the way that you have it set up is you have your grid set up. That could be a class. It could be a group of students within a class. You kind of can determine what your grid grouping would be. But I would kind of think of it as your grid is a group of students, however you choose to group those students. So I'm going to just add a grid here so you can see how that looks. So you can certainly set it up. It gives an example here if you had different level classes, different groups that you're meeting with. And I think for this platform, one of the things that's nice about it is you're not as locked into having one group. You could kind of shift kids. So even if you're using a platform like Google Classroom, you could maybe have a smaller group of kids do a Flipgrid grid and then do some kind of work in that. Because one of the benefits of this is that kids can see one another's videos that they post. So sometimes that might be a nice approach to take. As far as the setup and stuff like that, if your school uses Google Apps for Education, that's often kind of the easiest way to get things set up and going. But you certainly don't need to have that, and you can kind of set things up in a variety of different ways. So I'd say that's something to be considering as well. Just the whole initial setup part of it and getting that information out to students, especially if it's not something you've used before. You might look at what are the methods that you've been communicating with your students previously. So if you've been using something like Seesaw or Google Classroom, those tend to be the most popular kind of work management systems that we're seeing people using. So you could certainly leverage either of those. So I'm going to open up this one that I had started. So we actually had done a training for physical education teachers. So I want to show that I kind of gave that example a couple times. So just to show you, and they do have, I should point out, they do have this. So if you're just kind of getting started with students for the first time, one of the considerations that you might want to make is just setting up something that's very basic, kind of just making connections with students, on that basic level. Like, we're just getting started on this app, like send a video to say hello or what are you doing or something like that. That's probably your best first step. Past that, if you add a new topic, so the topics you might actually think of within your grid, you can have a number of topics, and your topics might be kind of like an assignment or whatever it is that you're asking your students to do within a Flipgrid. So this one, for example, so I can show you this because it's already set up so you can kind of see what it looks like. So I had linked to a YouTube video that demonstrated how to do a plank, what are some of the common problems that people have. And then I had an assignment here. So recording yourself doing a plank or reflecting after you've done a plank. So those are since it's a video delivery system, certainly you could have students record themselves doing some sort of task. So if you have students reading, you could have them record themselves doing, reading a passage in a book or reading something that you send to them. Or you could have them just sort of reflecting on some sort of activity that they've done. So those tend to be the two kind of common areas. So one's more a demonstration that they're capturing and sharing that you can get feedback on. The other one is reflecting more on some task that they have done, and it could be explaining something kind of after the fact. So those are kind of the basics. I can show you in there if you're setting something up. So if I click add a new topic, just so people might want to know that, this is what it looks like. So your topic, the title, again, that's kind of your, what you're asking students to do. So you might almost think of it as like a question or something like that. And then your prompt would be, obviously you're sharing a video, maybe respond to this video, and it could be a video of you, it could be a video that you've found somewhere else. You can certainly list text in here. Down at the bottom, they have links to some common tools. So if you want to record a video right within Flipgrid, you can do that. If you want to record it, externally and then upload that, you can do that as well. You can go out to YouTube and find videos. I think one of the pieces to be thinking about is for your students, it's really important to have that personal connection with you. So Flipgrid's great in that you can do assignments asynchronistically, so they don't have to be all in the same class at the same time to fulfill the assignment, but you also can include yourself maybe giving a little explanation, and that can be, a nice little connection for students. The recording time up here, you do have some parameters that you need to work within. The idea tends to be that it's something that's short and digestible. It's not really a long video, but this is where you can put the parameters for students. So if you have one of those rambling students, then it's nice to have those parameters. And then the video moderation piece. So what's nice about this is you can have those videos so they can be viewed by other people within a class, within a grid, and students can give feedback to other people's videos, which is really nice. And if you have some concerns around kids maybe making videos that might not be appropriate or off task or whatever, you can tick this off, and then you have the ability to moderate them. So you'd have to approve them before others can see them. So those are kind of the basics on Flipgrid. There's certainly a lot more to it. So I don't know if people have specific questions, but if you do, you can unmute yourself and I'll try to explain them as best I can.
I have a question.
Yes.
So if they're in the grid, can they see all the different topics if you only share a topic with a certain number of students?
So within that grid, could they see a whole bunch of topics? Is that what you're asking?
Yes. Or could you share a topic with just a specific group of kids and only they be able to see that and do the videos? Or if everyone in that grid can see all the topics and see all the videos?
So I guess one of the ways to think about it is the grid is kind of limited to whomever is in that grid. So if you kind of think of the grid as being in the class space. So if you had different assignments, if you wanted to assign the same assignment across different grids, you certainly could do that, and they're not all going to have viewing rights of the assignments across different grids. Hopefully that's what you were kind of asking.
So if I wanted just one group of kids to see one thing, they would need to be their own grid. Yes. And not a topic within a grid.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
So the grid is kind of the grouping of students, and then the topics are, kind of the assignments, I guess, within those groups, those grids.
Right,
I was just going to see, is there a way to share, if you had a topic set up, can you share across different grids? And that I'm not 100% sure of. I might have to do a little work on that. I thought you could do that, but I'm not 100% sure. This seems to not be. And I might actually, I only have one grid set up, so maybe that I might not be seeing that option because of that. But I can certainly look into that.
Mr. Graham,
Yes.
I do have a question. I'm a big picture thinker, a big picture person. So details, like if we start with details and I don't have the big picture, it's harder for me to understand.
Yep.
I'm an EdTech, works elementary, fourth grade teachers, fourth grade team. So I'm a little lost with like, why would we use this? And so I'm kind of trying to, by osmosis, get the big picture of all of these things that you're sharing with us.
Yep.
So I'm kind of assuming, and perhaps I'm wrong, maybe I'm not, that all of these things do the same big picture thing, which is communicate to students and parents, and they just have different ways of doing it. Or am I missing something? So if you could go bigger and give me a big picture, that would really help me a lot.
So I think, yes, definitely they're kind of communication tools. Flipgrid is very specific to video. So I think if you're looking at kind of the broader pictures, I think like Seesaw and Google Classroom are often ways that people will distribute work back and forth to students. One of the features of that people like is that you can kind of bring parents into the mix and you can share out, student work so other students could see it. You can kind of publish it on there. Parents can comment on things like that. So those tend to be kind of the systems that people are using in that, I guess, in that larger way. The other tools that we're looking at actually can work with either of those platforms. They can kind of tie in. So Flipgrid, I don't know that a teacher would only use Flipgrid, certainly like right now, but there are a lot of tools within, kind of tools out there that you might use. So there are aspects of Flipgrid, like being able to create a video and share it, that you can do in Seesaw. But some people might have used the Flipgrid format within their class, and they might really like that. So they might want their students to continue using that just because that's what they're comfortable with. But this Flipgrid itself really specifically focuses on video. So video recording yourself, either as a teacher to share content with students, or students record themselves doing a reflection. So it can just be their face and them talking, or it can be them trying to like physically demonstrate something. I've seen students hold up whiteboards and kind of walk their way through a math problem. I've seen students, like I was saying before, kind of like reading a passage so the teacher can hear them reading. So I think those are kind of the more common ways that people might leverage Flipgrid itself, but within kind of, maybe using other tools as well to kind of be communicating back and forth. Hopefully.
So as a follow-up,
Yep.
Thank you for that answer. As a follow-up, my teachers use Classroom, Google Classroom,
Yep.
and Class Dojo. Does Flipgrid work with either one of those programs?
It definitely works with Google Classroom. It would just be a matter of, so kind of to show you on here, when I go to the share, it actually has a share to Google Classroom. So you could actually move between the two platforms pretty easily. Dojo, I'm not sure with. I'd like to think yes, just because you could grab the link right within there and share it within Dojo. But obviously there isn't the button right in there to push. So I might have to do a little research on if you were to make those two kind of work together. But Class Dojo, it doesn't seem to be as of the different platforms that teachers are using to communicate out. For me, it doesn't seem like people are using it as much, but there are definitely people that are using it. And like I was kind of saying earlier, I think if there's interest in people learning more about that tool specifically and how to leverage that, certainly I could bring in some folks to share and talk about that. I actually know some people definitely that would be willing to share their experiences using Class Dojo and how they're leveraging it right now. But I think that's another example of kind of a way to manage sending assignments out to students and also receiving them back.
John,
Yes.
can you show me about the CoPilot? I saw the CoPilot up at the top.
Yep. So if you click this, this will be a way that you could add. So if a teacher, say, had a Flipgrid setup, they could add in EdTech specialists and people like that to kind of come in and be part of their class. And I think for teachers, I think they'd really like that, especially if you're a support staff person that works, one-on-one, or you have specific kids within a class that you work with. And sometimes, I mean, EdTechs kind of work with all of the kids within a class. So I think teachers having those additional hands on deck, so to speak, I think would be really helpful. So if you have a teacher that you're working with that they're using Flipgrid, for example, or Seesaw or Google Classroom, any of these tools, I think just letting them know, like, oh, can you share access with me so I can be, working with my students, especially if it's kind of a structure that's already set up. I think that's helpful.
John, I have a question.
Yes.
What is Dojo?
So Class Dojo started as a kind of behavior management system originally. So students were kind of assigned like cutesy little avatars, and teachers could give them points and set goals and things like that. And that would be sent home directly to parents. And for a long time, that was kind of their main thing. They were behavior management. They've since kind of branched out into being more related to sending work home, and you can communicate with parents through it and stuff like that. So I think a lot of schools tend to use, at the elementary, certainly at the early elementary, tend to use Seesaw or Dojo, not necessarily, like a teacher probably wouldn't use both of those. I know some teachers that they don't even do the behavior management pieces of it anymore. And I know some teachers that just still continue to use the behavior management piece. So I think so its original kind of focus was on the behavior management, but then they expanded out to be more, allowing more for like sharing of assignments and stuff like that. But that certainly, if there's the interest, people just, shoot me an email if that's something you're interested in. That definitely is a topic that we could look at. And if your school has Dojo and they're using it, then certainly that would make sense to spend some time learning more about it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I have a question about changing topics.
Mm-hmm.
If you first have a topic like say hello in Flipgrid, and
Yes.
then the children post their videos and they're all saying hello, and then you want to say, okay, share your favorite toy. Do you then go into the topic and change it on the topic line?
I would complete a completely new topic for that kind of. You'd almost think of the topics kind of as questions and stuff like that. So you wouldn't necessarily change a pre-existing one. We could certainly make this one, you could archive it or make it go away or whatever. And that's kind of just, I guess that's the way to think about it, is it's kind of questions, and certainly as you go on, you would be asking different questions or having different topics.
So would the videos from the existing one still be there, or
Yeah.
would they would be there at the same place as the new videos that
No, so within your grid, you would have, so this is one grid that I have, and there are multiple topics. I know the Planck one's kind of a duplicate, but each of these are separate instances.
Okay.
So if you pretend that each of those were different questions or topics, students would go in and they'd be able to access these as long as they're active, and they'd be able to put their video in there. But you can see I can freeze them or deactivate them in here.
So the videos change with each topic changing.
Yep. So it's kind of like you get a totally fresh topic once you set up a new one.
Okay, and then can you refer back to the old ones?
Yeah, certainly. As long as they're active, students would be able to see them. So you could hide them, and if you wanted to come back to them, you could unhide them, and you could, share that out anew, and it could still have that same original content in there.
So can the children access the old topics, or do they only see the topic that's
They would only see what's active.
Okay.
So it's kind of up to the person managing it, if the teacher, whomever. So if it's active, then they can actively see it. If it's I think if it's frozen, they could see it. They just wouldn't be able to like do anything. I think they can't add any new content, but I think they can still see it.
All right. So the teacher would then put the new topic, and so when the child goes into Flipgrid, the new topic would already be there.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. All right, since we're almost to 11:30, I just want to make sure if we have any last questions about Flipgrid.
I have one.
Yep.
Can you see who is in each grid, or can remove students from a grid if they leave that class or something?
Yes. So if I go back to my grids, so I don't really have one that's kind of as fully fleshed out with like a full roster of students. But in here, I mean, you could add in the students, and you definitely have a list of students that are in there, and you can change them or invite students to join a different grid as needed. All right, so since we are up to just about 11:30, I'm gonna stop my share on this guy. But definitely, if people have kind of more questions about Flipgrid, I would really strongly urge you to check out their PD offerings that they have. I think they're going to have, a variety of educators getting on there, either asking different questions, or they're going to be demonstrating. And obviously, because this is their team of outreach people, they're going to have, significantly more expertise and kind of examples about how to use their specific tool. So that might be, I think, a good PD option for yourself if Flipgrid's something you're curious about learning more. Oh, I will share the link to their trainings in the chat in just a second here. All right. So I think our next one that we were going to talk about was Padlet, and I'll turn it over to Emma.
All right, so I will talk about Padlet for maybe about 15, well, we'll talk about it for maybe 5 or 10, and I'll leave a few minutes for questions. And then since there's interest in Google Classroom as well, we'll try to leave 10 to 15 at the end to just kind of talk about any questions that might still be lingering. I will also mention that for anyone on this call who might not be aware, we did do a full hour of Google Classroom earlier this week, so that recording is available. So if we don't get a lot of time to talk about Google Classroom today, I would urge you to kind of check that out. That if it's not posted on the website yet, it should be by the end of the day today, but I believe it's already there. So I'm going to start out, actually, I want to start before I share my screen by just kind of going back to a question that I believe it was Joanne asked earlier, kind of just about the bigger picture. If I'm wrong about who asked that question, I'm sorry. About the bigger picture of using these tools. And I want to emphasize that Padlet and Flipgrid are tools that are great for leveraging interaction in a largely asynchronous environment. So by asynchronous, I mean where your students may not be connected all at the exact same time, but you're still trying to give them that sense of feeling connected. One of the things that I love about Padlet and Flipgrid is that it allows students to kind of have that almost synchronistic conversation. If they're both, like say students are all online at the same time, then they might be posting back to back, and then it would feel more synchronous than what they would normally kind of get to experience via Google Classroom or Seesaw or Class Dojo. So that would be kind of what I would say as far as how to frame your thoughts about it. Is they're great tools for increasing interaction and kind of engagement. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen in a moment. All right, so to get to Padlet, it is padlet.com. The dashboard shows up when you are logged in. So just to get to it would just be typing in padlet.com. You can put in the www, but you really don't need it anymore. And it gives you three, what they call Padlets, 3 Padlets for free. And then if you want to upgrade for $9 a month, you can get an unlimited amount. I just use these 3, and I will either archive them or delete them, remix them, however, whatever projects I have going at the time. So this is one that I have that's already kind of created that I made as an example for a project that we were talking about. And so it shows you kind of some of the basic functionality. I have this set up in a list form so I can create new, if I scroll over, I can add a column and title the column, and then it will give me this plus sign to actually add more. And then when you have more, you can scroll down. So this is one configuration. I'll show you the list of page configurations in a moment. But there are a lot of things that you can add into this. I like to call it like a really dynamic virtual sticky note, because you can put a video on your virtual sticky note. You could take a screenshot. There are a whole lot of things that you can put in here. You can link to a website. You can upload a file from your computer. So there's lots of options of ways for what content you can put on your little virtual sticky note. And so if I go back to this is your dashboard, your home page. When you're logged into Padlet, I can make a new Padlet. And then it gives me all of these options for how I might want to configure it. If I was doing a geography lesson, I might want to do the map, because it would let my students kind of pick a location to where they're going to put their sticky note. If I was doing a lesson on, points in history, I might do timeline. Or if I want them to be having a conversation, I could use, like set it up like it's a back channel. So there's all sorts of ways that you can configure your Padlet. I a lot of times really like I think it's the grid. But it really depends on your purpose. So I'm just going to use the grid view just as an example to show you kind of the process of going through it. Once you launch a brand new Padlet, it kind of gives you some default details so that you can see when you make your changes what will happen. And you can choose an icon if you want to associate it with something. Like if this was for, a phys ed class, I might pick, a soccer ball or a basketball or something like that. Or I can pick an emoticon. There's all kinds of things you could put as your own. Or you can upload one if you wanted to use a personalized school logo or something of that nature. You can customize the URL, which I think is super helpful, because you could do, it says my username right there. So padlet.com/EmmaMarieBanks. And then I could do, English 101 if that was what the class was. I can change the wallpaper, the appearance, the text. And then you kind of get into some of these features that I think we care a little bit more about is, do you want to allow comments on posts? Do you want to allow them to like them or vote on them, to give it a 1 to 5 rating? Do you want to be able to give a numeric score to posts? And then of course down here you can set it up so that you have to require approval, so that a student can't just post anything they want. You could set it up so that you have to give an okay before it shows up. And you can turn on an automatic profanity filter, so that if somebody tries to type a bad word, it just changes it to funny little emojis. Oh, actually, I'll go to next. Then once you do those details, you can change those details at any given time by clicking the setting button up in the top here. And then to start posting, you've got this little plus icon down here, or you can double click anywhere on the page and it will automatically pop one up. The way that I have this configured, it's not going to let me really move them because I've got it set up in a grid view. So it's just going to automatically square them off. But if I had set it up a different way, I could grab the top of this and drag it over someplace else that's just going to duplicate it. And so then I could start populating my Padlet right here. There's all sorts of ways that you can do it. If you're kind of curious about how you might leverage this tool, I've got a really awesome article that I will toss in the chat that I'm really a big fan of, because of course I'm not gonna be able to see the chat because I'm sharing my screen. Here we go. I'm really a fan of this article because it talks about 30 different ways that you might actually use Padlet. And so if you're kind of like, okay, well, how, you know, this is really cool, but how would I actually use it in my class or with my students? Some of the options that I like a lot are like having an online student portfolio. They can populate all of their school assignments or all of the research that they did, using it as an icebreaker. One thing I also really liked was they had one in here that was a birthday wall. If it's a student's birthday, you know, you could have students contribute to a birthday Padlet for them. I think that that's kind of great in this virtual environment where we're kind of missing those, you know, birthday celebrations, you know, and all those kinds of things. So like I wouldn't limit your thinking on these tools purely for school assignments. I would also think about this as a really awesome way to engage you with your students, but also your students with each other, because this gives them kind of a platform to share on. And then, yeah, so definitely check those out if you're kind of wondering how you might use it. And then the last thing that I kind of want to show you before I just open the floor to questions is from your Padlet dashboard. Once you create your account, if you don't have one, there is this wonderful green button right here. And this is a gallery of Padlets that people have made and shared publicly for reuse. So you could look through these and see if there's a Padlet example that you really like that you want to remake. And so I'll just click on a random one and we'll see what it looks like. And so you can see that this person set up a timeline and they kind of put, you know, the solar system planets, and you can scroll, you can see the scroll bar down here, so you can scroll through what they've done. And you can set up your sharing. So if you wanted to use this, I'll step back. First of all, if you love it, you could just give it a like, because, you know, somebody worked pretty hard on this. And otherwise, you can click to remake it, and then it gives you the option to copy the design and copy the posts, or just copy the design. And so I'm just going to copy the whole thing. I'm not going to change the name, but you'll see it put remake of right there. So that tells you that you're not looking at the original anymore. And so once that loads, now this is mine, and I can go in here and change it however I want, change the settings on it, share it out, you know, those types of things. I will say that the sharing options are really phenomenal, because you can change it so that you can keep your Padlet secret so that it's hidden from public, nobody can find it. But if you share it with somebody, share the link with them or the QR code or add their email to it, you can share it that way. So there are all sorts of ways to kind of keep it private, but also allow for your students to access it. Or if you want to share your awesome work, you can post it on the Padlet gallery and share it with everyone. And it does have this option to share on Google Classroom. And when you click on that, I'll show you. I'm going to choose my poetry example class, and I'm going to, let's create an assignment over it. So let's say that this Padlet wasn't already all filled out. I would say, I'm just going to do something boring like planetary assignment. And then we're going to say, choose a planet and do some research. Create a video, audio, or text response to your chosen planet in Padlet. And so then I can assign this to all my students if I'm in, Google Classroom. I can set a due date. I can put it in a topic. I'm going to put it into a topic just because. And then I can schedule this now, or I can assign it. I got a spelling error in there. And then so that's going to just allow me to see the assignment that I posted. So right there. And I'm the only student and I haven't turned it in, so oh well. So are there any questions kind of about Padlet before we talk about kind of, I know I'm already segueing into Google Classroom kind of naturally, but I want to just pause here for a minute, talk about Padlet and see if there are any questions.
So I shared in the chat a Padlet of a teacher in Farmington that I really like, because I think she's using it right now as a way to leverage some of the different tools that she's using. So I think that especially at the elementary level, this can be a nice way to think of, all right, this is a way that I might use Padlet to assist me in kind of this remote learning setting. But certainly you could use it to organize in a number of different ways. And somebody had said, like, a lot of the tools, and this is really our goal, a lot of these tools certainly are things that you can be leveraging right now, but they're definitely things that you can leverage when you get back to school, whatever the fall is going to look like. I think that's one of our big goals, is that we're not showing you guys tools just, with the intent that you're only using them right now, but that they're things that you could leverage whether you're in school, out of school. If you go back to this back in the fall and have time, whether it's with smaller groups or something like that, you might want to focus some time on getting them comfortable with these tools, knowing that maybe you're not going to be seeing them every day, or there's a possibility of things changing. I think the teachers that have been really successful with using a lot of the tools that we've been showing you are teachers that have been using those previous to this time period. So I think that would be one of my things to be thinking about in terms of planning in the fall, is to be thinking about how might you use those and what kind of training, I guess might be a word for it, might you need to be delivering to your students.
I have a question. With the Padlets, you said they could be archived. If you share them with someone, how long, like if you made a special Padlet for like a graduating senior, could they archive that and keep that and you delete it from your Padlets?
Gosh, that's a phenomenal question. I don't actually know the answer to that. I believe that when you archive it, it becomes unavailable to people, but I don't know if there's a way for a user to save it. Oh, yep, it looks like you can. Okay, hang on. Let me share my screen and I'll show you kind of what I'm seeing. You might have to play around with your settings to kind of know which settings specifically you would want to do, to know which one, like to figure out how somebody might keep it in the best format, I guess. But it looks like you can print it, you could export it. I'm not sure what that looks like when you export it. Let's see. Let's try to export it as a PDF and see what happens. So yeah, you can get the same information. It just may not look as dynamic or as functional. It might look better if you were to save it as an image. But you certainly, it looks like you certainly can export it in several different ways. So I think that that would be certainly a use you could achieve with this, would be to have something that you share with somebody, they save it, and then you archive it or delete it.
And you can work on 3. If you joined and are working on one with a person, does that count as one of your 3 you can have?
I don't believe so. I believe that it's the ones you're the owner of, but that's another question that I'm not 100% sure on. Oh yeah, see, so an image would be much better because it's more dynamic. it looks like.
Would that allow videos to be exported as well?
So no, that is going to be where you kind of end up in a sticky sticky wicket. Is that what it is? Because the image, videos almost never will download properly, just like even to a PDF. So I would think that you're going to lose some of that functionality when you go to download it or export it into a separate format.
Thank you.
Yeah. I definitely encourage you to experiment around with it. If you have somebody who doesn't mind kind of partnering with you, then you could add their email. John and I do that kind of a lot to each other. It's like, hey, I'm going to add you to this and you can help me check it out. So feel free to kind of play around with it with somebody who isn't going to have, you know, the stress of like trying to figure out how to complete their assignment for the week, you know, like, so if you can test it out with somebody like another teacher or something before you do it with your students, and I would encourage that. I think that you'll find there's quite a bit of functionality in there, and there's all sorts of ways that it can be leveraged. I'm constantly just stunned by how people are leveraging these different tools. So it's 11:48. I just kind of want to see if there are any final questions before we move into Google Classroom. Is there any other questions about Padlet or Flipgrid? So John, there's a question, which one's easier for students to use with Seesaw, Flipgrid or Padlet?
That's a good question. I mean, I've seen, I guess at the early elementary level, I've seen people use Seesaw and Flipgrid a lot. I've seen actually a lot of the functionality of Flipgrid. I've seen teachers just use Seesaw and not kind of worry about adding in that other element. I don't know that I don't think for like early elementary, I don't think I've seen people using Padlet before. Not that you couldn't, but I just don't think that I have. So that would be kind of my thing, is just I've seen people use Flipgrid more kind of tied in with Seesaw, and I haven't seen Padlet used at the early elementary level, which tends to be where Seesaw is the most popular. I think it's obviously as kids get older, I think Flipgrid is very simple. That's one of the benefits of it. It's like a big green plus button, and a lot of emojis and stuff like that. Padlet's a little bit more complex, so I think that's kind of that. If that would be the separating line between the two. Yeah, and I mean I've seen Flipgrid across the board, so not just at the elementary level, but I think it's just because it's capturing video in a kind of easy way, easy to share. So I mean, it really is something that you can use from pre-K all the way up through seniors in high school.
Yeah, I mean, it's being used at the university right now. So, oh yeah, it goes all the way up. So I used Flipgrid in one of my master's classes a year or two ago now. So
yeah.
Okay, awesome. So we just recognizing that we're kind of running low on time. I kind of just want to open the floor to just general questions about Google Classroom. I don't think we really have enough time to do any type of like solid demonstrations, but I just kind of want to be respectful of the fact that we did pencil in some time to talk about Google Classroom. So if anybody has any questions, troubleshooting, something that you're really stuck on, feel free to toss that out. Cecile, if you're talking, you're muted.
Hi, I have a question. Can you go on and try these out before you buy them?
None of these cost money to try or even to use. Flipgrid is 100% free all the time. Google Classroom is 100% free. I believe even Seesaw is 100% free. And then Padlet, you get 3 free Padlets. And then if you want full, like if you want to be able to make 100 Padlets, then you can pay the $9 a month. But there are the 3 that are included for free. So one thing that we really try to focus on is providing tools that people can use without having to put any money into the game, because as we all know, when you're trying something out for the first time, you may not know if it's going to work for what you're trying to do. So it's not helpful if you have to, get past that paywall to even see if it is worth your time.
Okay, thank you.
Seesaw, I should point out, it is free if you set it up as your own classroom. The paid feature, Seesaw, Schools for Seesaw, and there's also like a premium access. So there are some paywalls there, but you certainly could use it and have a lot of functionality. I would say most teachers I know that use Seesaw are just using the free version of it.
So any other questions about any of the 3 tools? I don't want to limit people.
I'm looking at,
Yeah.
go ahead. I'm looking at the Padlet and the one that John shared with us, and it's there's a lot of things made with Seesaw that are posted and shared with Padlet.
Mhm.
Can you go, like you showed us how to take Padlet and go out of it. Can
Yeah.
you show us how to get something into it? And I'm sure it probably starts with Seesaw to get into it, or is there something else that happens?
I'm sure. So the one of Nicole's that I shared, my hunch would be that she kind of used the links from the videos. And I don't know, Emma, if you have your Padlet set up kind of to do that quickly. But I mean, what's nice about Padlet is that you can easily link in a lot of those external pieces. And so you could watch those videos right within that Padlet. But a lot of those you could actually go to the page itself. So for her kids, most of them would be in her Seesaw environment. So they might be accessing it that way, but she's kind of used Padlet as an organizational tool. So she's able to direct people there, and then they can kind of see anything that they need to see beyond just her Seesaw classroom.
Yeah, so, okay, I was gonna try to just pull this up real quick, okay. So I'm gonna guess that what she did was she took the link to her Seesaw welcome video and just pasted it right in here.
Yeah.
And then it will populate. So I was trying to see, I should be able to take, this is her video. Sorry, I know I'm jumping a step. I clicked on this video that she had here, and then I was just gonna take the link to it and then go in here and I can paste it in, save, and it should do the exact same thing.
Nice, thank you very much.
So Anne was asking about setting up a Google account. So you certainly can set up a personal one if you want to, but if your school has Google account set up, that's probably the best way to go. So that might be something to reach out to your technology staff and see if that's something that they have or something that they set up. Certainly it's something you can set up for free. It's nice if you're in a school environment because it's easy to share stuff with students that way.
Unrelated to the current topics, when I went to click on, I was not able to click on from my laptop this morning. I had to go on my phone, which is a little bit more challenging. Is there are you resending the invite for 3 o'clock? Or could you resend the invite for 3
I think you
o'clock?
should be able to, because you'd get the email, or if you, when you go, you can actually join kind of once it's already started. So if you connect at 3, you should be able to join right then, hopefully. So you should have a
Okay.
link in your email, as well as you could join it once it's already started pretty quickly.
Yeah, I did, and it just kept spinning
Hmm.
and spinning. So I came onto my phone, and it worked.
Yeah.
So I still got to see it, but
Well,
harder.
the classic tech advice would be restart. Restart the app, restart your device between now and 3 p.m. I know it can be hard because we get so much stuff on there, but that would be the
Thank you.
classic tech advice.
These have been very helpful. Thank you.
Awesome.
Any final questions or thoughts?
Oh, I need to share the link for contact.
That's a good final thought.
Let me make sure. I was gonna say I had that all saved, but I obviously copied that other link in there.
So while John's finding that, I'll give you kind of an overview of how that process works for us. You fill out this quick little form, and then there's a kind of a process that John has to go through to get certificates out to people. There is a limit on how many it will let him send within a day. So try to give, 3 to 5 days or so for your certificate to come through. But once you fill out that form, that process will have started. Make sure, please, if you can, that your email is 100% correct, because if it is not correct, you will not receive your certificate without having to reach out to us. Any questions about that? John, did you share the link to training for Flipgrid?
I did somewhere earlier on in here. If you look up Flipgrid PD, it's should be the first thing that shows up. Let's see.
All right, let's see. I was trying to see if I could pull it up real quick.
I
But...
grabbed it.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
And I think all the tools that we have, there are a lot of training opportunities available online. So certainly don't feel like this is your only opportunity to get some training on these.
I would also,
whether it's on YouTube or through their own company.
right. I would also encourage you that if you are a Facebook user to check out Facebook groups, because teachers have kind of flocked to Facebook groups to talk about specific tools. I'm part of a few different teacher groups on Facebook for Google Classroom, Bitmoji, things like that. And the stuff that's happening in there is phenomenal. And a lot of the teachers are very willing to share how they did what they did and what they did. So I would encourage you to check that out if you're a Facebook user.
For sure.
All right, well, it is 12 o'clock, so we're not going to hold you any longer. Hopefully this was helpful. If you're interested in checking out, we're having a session at 3 p.m. about infographics, posters, memes, kind of trying to do visual representations instead of just only text. So that'll be at 3 p.m. if you want to join in. And everyone have a lovely afternoon.
Did you
Bye.
get the certificate information posted?
Yes, it is in the chat. I will drop that again real quick before I end the meeting, though, so you can grab it.
Thank you.
You are very welcome. Bye, everyone.